You're listening to There Ought to Be a Law, the Center for Auto Safety podcast with Executive Director Michael Brooks, Chief Engineer Fred Perkins, and hosted by me, Anthony Simino. For over 50 years, the Center for Auto Safety has worked to make cars safer.
The dulcet tones are coming through now.
Dulcet to see. Dulcet to see. I like that.
We're losing subscribers by the second.
And what do you give the person who has everything?
I don't know.
Electric toothbrush.
Penicillin. My sister's a nurse.
Anyway, listeners, welcome to the show. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, and boy, oh boy, is this a special occasion. It's such a special occasion, these two guys don't even know. Do you guys know what today is?
August
Is it your
19th.
birthday?
Oh, it's not my birthday. Come on, guys. Today is episode 1 of season 5 of the show. We've done over 250 episodes of this.
It's amazing, yet we're still fresh, young, and beautiful.
Some of that is true. And with that, thanks for joining us again, listeners. I'm going to start up with a little update. Last week, I left you on a cliffhanger about my Toyota Corolla and the body panels popping off.
Oh, duct tape.
So, no, I went to the car and the body panels were pushed in. They were fine. And during this 400-mile drive, they didn't pop out. And afterwards, I saw how the clips are. They're like little dovetail joints. But an astute listener said, don't use tape. The strength of the tape is not as good as the strength of the clips. But again, the body panel didn't pop out, so I don't care. I don't get it. But Toyota, come on, do better. Do better.
How about tape, clips, and glue?
Tape, clips, and glue. And so with that, let's jump into some things that we talked about last week. Everyone remember Flock? Okay.
I do remember Flock, yeah.
Yeah, well, they've gotten a lot of flack because everyone... Flack, because the police in particular are using it to spy on ex-girlfriends, wives, things like that. Really creepy, and Flock didn't have any mechanism to really prevent this and didn't really care until a bunch of news articles came out, and now Flock cares. They say we're recommending a 7-day automatic license plate reader retention period and introducing evidence mode to preserve specific data for active investigations. And what this means is we're making a recommendation. Like my dentist says, we suggest you floss every day. So it's not really anything changing as far as I can tell. Unless you guys have...
No, it's not, because they can override any of those suggestions very easily. And probably do.
But hey, I just wanted to...
Yeah, I mean, they're leaving it up to the discretion of the departments to retain the data for 30 days. It looks like they're kind of, trying to bribe them into defaulting to the 7-day retention by giving them evidence mode for free, whatever evidence mode is. So it's, I don't know. I hope that they're doing more auditing. It's interesting. They're tying a case number, which is something, I said last week they should be doing. So you can ensure at least that when police officers are searching the system, they are searching for a valid criminal case and not searching to see where their ex-wife is at the moment. So, some improvements, but I don't know that, there's a lot of issues with Flock. There's some cybersecurity issues with, third-party actors that aren't police gaining access to the data and using it for whatever means they'd like to. I don't see a world in which this system's ever going to be perfect, right? I think you're going to always see a rogue police officer trying to find ways around the safeguards in place. But ultimately, I think what has to happen here is Flock has to improve its operations to a level where people who haven't committed crimes aren't threatened by the technology, and I don't think they're there yet by any means.
As we find out more as this develops, we'll keep you updated on the latest in flocking. But let's talk about something we talk about every single week. Every single week we talk about safety recalls. And a lot of these recalls, we mentioned something called the park outside warning. And it's always kind of, okay, this is not going to be a good one because park outside warnings are really popping off because a lot of cars are exploding into flames. Quoting from an article we're linking to from MSN, standard safety recalls, which still make up the vast majority of formal notices, are usually thought of as being dangers tied to driving, brakes failing, or airbags exploding. Clearly, this reporter does not listen to this show because it's a whole gamut of things and things that we didn't even know about. Further down, I'm going to quote, it can be a giant disaster when cars catch fire and no one is there to see it, said Michael Brooks, executive director of the Center for Auto Safety. Now, what do you mean it's a big disaster when no one's there to see it? Because, like, they can't come out and take photos.
Yeah, right. Oh. If you're asleep in your house and you don't know that the car is on fire, I think that's one of the main drivers behind park outside recalls are people who are parking a vehicle in their garage, going inside, and then 8 hours later, when you're asleep, your vehicle catches fire. It's something that traditionally we didn't see much, if anything, of. I think some of the first recalls or that should have been a park outside recall but weren't, were some Ford cruise control deactivation switch recalls that started and went on for quite some time. I think from late 90s through the early 2000s, and that was in an era where vehicles didn't have a lot of technology that was always on, and the electronics and computing systems in vehicles were negligible compared to what they are now. And so now that we have all of these electronics loaded into cars, all of these electrical systems that are active even when the car is turned off and parked, I think it's somewhat inevitable that we were going to see a lot more park outside recalls, situations where the vehicle's catching on fire, not while it's in operation or post crash, but when it's supposed to just be sitting there inert with no chance of catching fire. So this is something that NHTSA has recently focused on a little more. They've improved their communications around park outside recalls. It's something that, you need to be concerned about if you own a parking garage or a large facility where a lot of cars park, because if you're allowing vehicles with a park outside recall into those facilities, you're putting your entire facility, other people's cars at risk. We saw a massive fire, I think, down in Florida in an airport in the last couple of years that I don't know that it could have been avoided by a park outside recall, but it shows you what damage cars can cause when they catch on fire in proximity to a lot of other cars, in proximity to building structures, and in proximity to people who may not be aware there's a fire. So that's kind of where I was going with that. It's certainly going to be more of a problem when the humans around the fire aren't aware that the fire is taking place than, if they have some advance notice and can put that vehicle outside, not in their carport, and not have to worry about it.
So here's a suggestion. It's only half smartass. Well, what if you combine that imperative with a flock? So could a flock camera identify cars that are going into a parking garage that should be parked outside? I mean, seriously, that could happen, right?
I mean, all you have to do is connect up the data coming from the flock camera to the data coming out of NHTSA on park outside. And yeah, you could identify cars that come in and say, hey, you can't park here. I don't know that we would advocate using flock for that in private areas, but there are a lot of flock cameras deployed in private, subdivisions, HOAs, and things throughout the country where, the pushback against cities and counties and the public using them really isn't going to have an impact because they're being used privately.
So flock, go ahead and use that suggestion. I won't demand a royalty, but, fix the damn system so it helps somebody rather than just a noise and endangers everybody.
Hey, yeah. I mean, how about use that in combination with a law requiring people to get recalls repaired?
There you go.
And so anytime you're on a road with an open recall, you get flagged, right?
Well, that'd be great if the police pulled you over because you're identified in flock and they hand you a little notice saying, go get your car fixed.
Yeah.
I mean, they're helping Waymo, right? They're helping Tesla close the doors. They're doing all that great stuff for people. So
I think I'd prefer them, send me a letter versus pulling me over, and a lot of people would, but that's another issue.
Oh, well, the police like to pull people over. It's kind of gives them a charge.
What do you mean my car is still on when I've turned it off?
Well, a lot of the electrical systems are still active and still are delivering the high voltage to the devices when the car is turned off. So there's two ways to stop a current, right? you can either interrupt the current before it gets to a device, or you can interrupt the ground wire on the other side of the device. In either case, you'll stop the current from flowing through, so you save your battery. But in the first case, you've eliminated the danger of stray voltage, peeking out through a broken wire or whatever and causing a fire. Well, in the second case, you have not, because the voltage can still go from that, or the current can still flow from a frayed wire, for example, or a loose connection, and short out on the body of the vehicle.
So you're saying, so my car has like, a keyless, and it's not keyless entry, it's a fob. And so I imagine there's still some sort of battery being used to monitor, hey, has been a message sent to me that unlock the doors or something like that. But
there's all sorts of always on electronics there. We saw a large recall over the last few years involving the electronic control unit, the hydraulic electronic control unit in Hyundai and Kia vehicles. So virtually anywhere there's some type of electrical signal going on when the car is off that's faulty, there could be problems, right?
Yeah, but you'll typically have a fuse in the circuit so that it'll blow the fuse before it gets a chance to do any damage by overheating. But certain circuits, like a circuit going to an electric motor for prime, what am I looking for? For primary torque to drive the car. If that circuit stays energized, then you got a problem, because it's much more difficult to put a fuse in that circuit. So for the little signal circuits you got, like the power that goes to your fob or whatever is starting the process of starting your car, you got a fuse in there that's going to protect the circuit and protect your car. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think most people are aware of this. I think most people think, hey, I've turned my car off. My car's off. It's fine. It's a little still warm, but it will cool down. But I guess modern cars aren't really doing that anymore. So.
Yeah, your internal combustion engine isn't operating, but all of the electronics that have flooded cars in the last 30 years certainly are in a lot of cases. Not all of them, but there are specific areas where vehicles stay on.
Yeah, I think you've probably seen cars that still run the fan after you shut the car off.
Right. I've definitely heard that. And you're like, oh no, did I turn it off? Got it. Okay. All right, let's jump to another recall-related issue that we talk about all the time. You know what it is? Come on, anybody? Backup cameras. That's right. Our friends at Bloomberg have been listening to the show. They've been hearing me complain. They've been hearing me rant, and they wrote a great article titled "The Faulty Backup Cameras Are Plaguing Tens of Millions of U.S. Cars." Now, I talk about this all the time, and it drives me nuts. And I'm going to quote from this article because I learned quite a bit. Quoting, automakers have recalled approximately 21 million vehicles in the last 8 years, including almost 6 million just last year, according to a Bloomberg analysis of NHTSA data. That number balloons to nearly 28 million when including other vehicle types that are subject to the backup camera mandate, such as recreational vehicles, small buses. Now, I've said all of these recalls out loud over the last 250-something episodes. But I didn't realize it was 28 million vehicles over faulty backup cameras. That's insane.
Well, it is insane. But remember, that number of recalled vehicles is not the same as the number of faulty cameras.
Right. But it's still pointing out this is a big problem. I mean, what other feature? Michael, are you aware of the last 8 years? Something that has generated as many recalls as that, excluding Ford, because everything Ford does gets recalled.
There may be another. I think I would take a stab and say probably airbags or something like that is up at that level, but it always has been. But as far as like the fastest growing safety defect category we've seen, bar none, the last few years is it's been impossible for us to ignore are the backup camera problems. That's why we dedicated a whole episode to it, right?
That's true. And Fred, your favorite, JD Powers, they did a consumer survey, and the complaints that consumers have, the number one complaint it seems they have is car cameras. The backup cameras being, I don't know if it's the number one complaint, but it's
the cameras in in combination with some of the advanced vehicle electronics that are showing up on your dashboard. The lack of buttons, I think they're including all that kind of in this general. You've got this giant computer in the center of your car now that is screwing up somehow. And whether that's backup cameras, whether that's you can't figure out how to start your defroster or any other issues, it's confusing people. And that's where a lot of the JD Power stuff was focused on the confusion by the touch screens and all this new stuff we've brought into cars in the last 5 years. It's been an incredibly, I think one of the fastest movements we've seen in vehicle technology ever has been how fast the massive touchscreens have moved into cars. And there have not been a lot of checks around safety there. We've talked about the switching from buttons where people know where they are to burying something in menus. The studies on this phenomenon have not even, they're still trying to pass Congress. So it's not an area where NHTSA or really the automakers, I think, have their head fully wrapped around. We see Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen and other manufacturers saying they're going back to buttons now, mainly because of the consumer outrage and how it impacts them from a monetary perspective, I think, not necessarily the safety issues we've seen. But it is, an incredibly important area because it's essentially how we're changing the way that humans are controlling their cars without really addressing the safety outcomes during that process. So I think we're going to continue to struggle with this, particularly as we see AI and nonsense AI make its way into cars.
How dare you say nonsense AI? Hey, AI, that's
95% of it is nonsense, right? AI, 95% of your buddies are full of shit.
Dear AI overlords, that's Michael Brooks. Okay, it's not Fred or I. We think you're great and you smell wonderful. So anyway, this is one of my big bugaboos, the backup cameras. And with big bugaboos, let's go into our gaslights of this week. And Fred, I believe you wanted to start with that cute little toaster oven of a car, Zoox.
Zoox. They put out a press release talking about their safety case and why we should believe it. And it's pretty great until you read it. And of course, if you read it, you come up with a few questions. So, for example, and we'll have this reference for people who want it. They state the total residual safety risk is then aggregated using a quantitative risk assessment framework, whatever that means. But what's the number? They never tell you what the number is. So what is the risk assessment? They go on to say, we update the safety case and confirm that the combined quantified risk across all three domains meets our safety targets. Again, what's the number? What are you hiding here? Estimated rate of potential collision, injury, and fatality events, they aggregate as CIF, measured in miles per event. And the CIF metric must meet or exceed our targets for roads. Well, that sounds pretty great until you ask, what's the number? Are passengers informed of both the absolute and relative safety estimate? And also, CIF is a really sparse drilling metric. How many fatalities do you really have to base your data on? And since crashes, damn well better be rare, how much confidence can you really have in the number? What are the leading metrics? Leading metrics would be something like near misses or, deviation from the planned trajectory. There's a lot of ways to look at how your control system is working daily while not having to wait for somebody to die to assemble your statistics. So what are those leading metrics and how much confidence does Zoox have in them? And they go on to say we follow ISO 262 and adherence to FMVSS. And ISO 262 defines safety as absence of unreasonable risk. But there's no federal or state definitions of what unreasonable means. So Zoox, what's your target? What do you think is reasonable? We'd like to know. And what's your confirmation of adequate requirements verification? Well, what does that mean? And where's the validation process defined? You don't talk about that in your press release. Rather than dwelling on all the others, and I encourage our listeners to spend a few minutes reading that. It's kind of fun to read. But
No, it's not.
Finally, they go on to say, additionally, the robotaxi is tested and verified to meet or exceed the performance requirements in the applicable federal motor vehicle safety standards. And in a footnote, they say, while Zoox is exempted from certain FMVSS, we nevertheless design and target systems to assure that they meet the safety purpose of those requirements. Blah, blah, blah. We approach our sensor clearing system like a conventional windshield wiping system. But notably, they have no crash test requirements for the unusual seating arrangement. There's a lot of gaps in what they actually put into these vehicles. So I am nominating them for my Gaslight this week.
That's excellent.
Good old Zoox.
Fred, I got some follow-up questions for you.
Yeah.
How many Zoox are in operation now? Do you have any idea?
I think it's a few hundred.
It's a few hundred, right? It's less than 1,000, right?
I would think, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the number.
Okay, and it's mainly in Las Vegas in a very tight, restricted operational design domain.
I believe that's right.
I think San Francisco's got some too.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I read through their press release, and I, unlike you, Fred, I do not encourage listeners to read it because unless you have trouble sleeping.
Importantly, they're allowed to deploy 2,500 under the exemption they just got, right?
But they have not. So I'm going to quote from their press release. Before any safety relevant software release, hardware change, or operations revision, we update the safety case and confirm that the combined quantified risk across all three domains meets our safety targets. And, as Fred, as you pointed out, that sounds amazing, but nothing's really said there and defined. It's kind of like all software typically is, you run a bunch of test cases on it before you release it out into the wild, and then it breaks, and then you update your test cases, and then you rerun it, and then some other glitch you find, it breaks, and you keep doing that. They ignore all of that. And so what they're trying to say is that, hey, we're safe as can be. So I'm going to point out that NHTSA has logged 123 collisions involving Zoox vehicles in autonomous mode as of March. Okay, so they've got less than 1,000 vehicles, and since March, they've been involved in 123 collisions.
That's not great.
No, that's worse than Tesla.
Yeah.
I mean, back of the envelope math, that is much worse than Elon's Nazi mobile. Like, this is insane. I didn't realize it was that shitty.
Yeah, well, they go on to say, actually, that they talk about, I'll just read from it. As I mentioned earlier, our dedicated collision avoidance testing methodology targets simulation scenarios that may have a low quantitative impact on CAF because they occur extremely rarely and are difficult to find in driving logs, but represent high collision avoidance situations, especially involving VRUs. VRU stands for vulnerable road user. Like any pedestrian is a VRU. So as I read this, it seems to mean that they only evaluate pedestrian avoidance in simulation and on actual roads, but not on a test track. It seems like a stupendously hazardous way to approach pedestrian safety, particularly in a place like Las Vegas, which is for some reason known to have a lot of drunks walking around the roads and people who are, partying late at night and doing all kinds of things that might cause them to be less than attentive to an unguided vehicle that's streaming along that could easily kill them.
Zooks. What a Michael's shaking his head in disappointment. I don't know if it's talking about
I just
Zooks.
don't understand. There's a line in here that I was just looking at, to be, they say they have a test set to represent rare collision avoidance scenarios. And to pass that, the Zoox robotaxi must perform on par with or better than nominal human drivers in the simulation. Like, how many wiggle words can you put in there, man? Just say, we're going to perform 10 times better than the average human, right? We're just barely going to be better than this nominal guy in order to pass. That's pretty pathetic, in my opinion, that they can't do better than that prior to passing these systems.
With that, I would like to remind listeners that Waymo often makes a bogus claim, says they're 94% better than the average human. And I'd like to remind listeners that the three of us, as well as most of you, are 100% better and safer than a Waymo. With that, go to autosafety.org, click on donate if you are safer than a Waymo, which odds are you are. Next up, Michael, what's your gaslight was fascinating. I read that article and I'm like, wait, this is a thing?
I just look back at that. I'll do it, but I look back at it and it was for whatever reason published last year and came into the feed this year. But it was an article from Slash Gear that says the whole article, the reason why passenger airbags have an on-off switch, and they're talking about a manual on-off switch. This whole article. Passenger vehicles haven't had manual on-off switches in almost 20 years, and that was typically reserved for two-seaters like pickups or, Corvettes, things where you only have two seats up front, and you wanted to be able to manually turn off that airbag if you had a child or pet or whoever riding in the front seat that you didn't want to be impacted by an airbag that wasn't designed for them in a crash. The entire article talks as though they are currently going into cars, and these are things you need to learn about. But my point was even the picture in the car shows a picture of not an on-off switch, but the indicator telling you when the occupant detection sensor has determined that the vehicle needs to turn its airbags off. This is all automatic now. There's no such thing as a manual on-off switch in cars anymore, to my knowledge, and hasn't been for quite some time. So that was my gaslight. But then I switched gears in without telling our esteemed host, Anthony, and to the cyber cab, because this was talking about deploying it and putting it on roads and charging the public for rides. And it doesn't have a steering wheel. It doesn't have brakes. They haven't even applied for an exemption with NHTSA. They can't do it, right? And they're saying they can. More nonsense from Musk, Tesla, complete bullshit. Don't buy it.
You can't buy it.
Yeah, you can't buy it. And it's just insane that corporations are allowed to mislead the public in the way that some of them are doing right now.
From an article we'll link to on this in Electric, I'm going to quote, "The company completed emergency training with Austin first responders last week, teaching them how to move the vehicles out of the way," a spokesperson for the city confirmed. Tesla has also been running test drives and giving employees rides on private roads around its Austin campus since July. So they're, again, just wasting taxpayer dollars. Be like, hey, first responders, when our system breaks, here's how you move it. If any of you work for DoorDash, you might already be familiar with this.
And we have no insight into that, right? We don't know what they told the cops. Like, is there a joystick hidden in the console that they can pull out and use, right? Who knows?
Just push it.
There's a lot of, as usual, when covering Tesla, there are a lot of blurred lines here and stuff we're never going to find out about, because that's how they operate their business, under this kind of cloud of bullshit.
Well, so, Michael, you pointed out that Tesla has not sought in the exemptions required to put these cars on the road. They haven't sought that, which blows me away, because he's a Trumper.
Continually for years now said, "Oh, we're just waiting for the regulations or we're waiting for the regulatory process to take place," and yet they have not availed themselves of any of the ways that exist in federal law to become exempt from federal motor vehicle safety standards if you're using a vehicle that doesn't have human controls and other things.
I mean, he painted the car Trump gold. Like, this is the most friendly administration possible for them. He's putting another $100 million into the Republicans' campaign. And even he's like, yeah, we better not apply. This shit won't get passed.
I think these cars are actually, compared to Zeus, compared to Waymo, I think they're still trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And that square peg is the fact that we talked about last week, the camera issue, whether or not these vehicles are ever going to be capable of anything other than assisted driving. I don't think they should be. And I don't even think they're doing that good of a job at the assisted driving right now, given a lot of the crashes we've talked about. So it's just more nonsense from, the person in the company that have manufactured more nonsense than most in the past decade, for sure.
Well, Michael, I've heard that money talks and bullshit walks, but what you're saying is money is bullshit and the walk With the walk you don't have to do because you got a lot of money. Huh?
Yeah, I think it becomes dangerous when you combine the bullshit walking along with the money talking together in one company.
All right, so Michael, for official scoring reasons, what is your gaslight?
I'll go with, just because it's more relevant and more recent, I'll go with the gilded cyber cab.
Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to go into mine now, and mine is solid state batteries. The entire industry is gaslighting us, and I love this idea. I want a solid state battery. It sounds magical. It sounds great, and they've been treating me like I'm a fanboy. From an article from Scientific American, I'm going to quote, in June, battery researcher and YouTuber Ryan Hughes and outside experts presented evidence that Donut Cell was high-performance lithium ion with liquid inside. People who've spent a long time in the battery industry have a healthy dose of skepticism, Holmes says. So,
as they should.
Yeah, Donut.
I would expand that to the car industry.
Right. So this is Donut Labs. We talked about it first over a year ago, that they're like, we have it. We're not using any rare earth materials. It's going to be phenomenal. And it turns out it was the Norwegians of all people were lying to us.
I think the Finns.
Finnish. Were they Finn? What? It's some Nordic country where
you better
they
watch yourself. You're going to get a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't have a bunch of angry Norwegian farmers coming after you.
Hey, what are they farming? Anyway, it's the entire industry has just been talking about this. They quote further down that Toyota has most of the corporate patents around this. They say they'll finally start appearing within 2 years. I believe 2 years ago, Toyota said the same thing. I am Charlie Brown.
Somebody did if it wasn't Toyota.
Solid state batteries are Lucy holding the football. It is solid state batteries.
I like the Lucy holding the football analogy. That applies to so many things going on in the world of PR versus reality.
Well, you know what they've always said about fusion energy, right? It's the power of the future, and it always will be.
Does that go for quantum computing as well?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. This is a tough one to score this week. I mean...
some weeks you just might have to say, we were all great.
No, I'm not doing that crap. That's bull, okay? I mean, I'm...
A participation trophy. Come on.
I'm going with who do we get the most excited about? And I think it might have been Fred. I think Fred might have the edge because I think all three of us jumped in. Mine, you guys just laughed because like, that's right.
Is
that's
that 2
funny.
weeks in a row for Fred, though?
No, I won last week, I think. Wait, did Fred win last week? I don't know. This might be Fred.
I don't think I did win last week. I won. Must have been some other week.
So, Fred, you're the winner of this week's Gaslight of the Week.
My life is worthwhile. Thank you. I have purpose finally.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, slow your roll. All right, let's go. Oh, this is a fascinating one. We've talked a lot about distracted driving, and again, I'll bring back. We had that Massachusetts sheriff on years ago, and I asked him. I said, well, "Who's the scariest driver on the road? A drunk driver or a teenager?" And he said, "Someone texting, a distracted driver." And I was like, "Oh my God!" And so this article from CNN, this Harvard doctor, he did this research showing that there's more car accidents when a new album is released. So what happens is that, a new album comes out, people are paying attention to their phone and trying to get the latest hit pop wonder song, and they're not looking at the road, and so they're getting into crashes. But my takeaway is that, because he talked about the albums that had the most crashes or most streamed albums were things by Taylor Swift, by Drake, by Bad Bunny. My takeaway is that bad music causes car crashes.
That's my takeaway.
Well, sorry.
That modern pop music is so bad it's killing us.
Without a doubt.
This is clearly a distraction thing. I don't know what to make of this in some respects, because they're not looking at, the most recent release of a Mozart album here, right? They're
what album? Mozart?
Yeah,
what's a Mozart?
Mozart.
Oh, Mozart. Oh, sorry.
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, that guy. They're looking at albums here that are typically going to be purchased by drivers who are very young and maybe even more susceptible to distraction.
You're showing your age. Albums purchased
than others.
When's the last time someone's purchased an album? Jeez, Grandpa here.
My takeaway is a little different because, to the best of my knowledge, I've never actually heard any recording from any of those people that they listed. So my takeaway is I'm really out of touch here.
Yeah, Fred. I mean, I've heard recordings by Taylor Swift, Drake, Bad Bunny, Harry Styles, maybe Kendrick Lamar.
You're
not
really at
Kanye.
the center of modern culture.
Not really. They're just so prevalent. You can't avoid them. I mean, you can't even watch a sports event without seeing. I mean, I think I've seen Drake, Bad Bunny, Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, and Kanye West all on a Super Bowl halftime or something stupid like that. Luckily not while I'm driving though, and I've not bought any of their albums or even listened to them on Spotify or stolen them off Napster. Is Napster still around? No.
Again, dating yourself just a little bit,
Michael. But this is great. So I'm going to quote from the article. Patel, he's the doctor. His new study published Monday in the journal JAMA Network Open found a 15% increase in traffic fatalities on the days major new albums are released compared with the days immediately before and after. 15% increase. That is insane. Do people not use voice controls in their car and say they actually want to look at their phone? I mean, sure, half the time when I ask my car to play an album, it chooses something totally wrong and incorrect. But that's part of the fun.
Hey, ask your son if he's ever done that, Anthony.
He doesn't have a driver's license.
Doesn't have
I'd be interested to
no.
see. I'd be interested to kind of, look at this a little deeper. But I certainly could see, kids. I would love to see them break this out by age to see whether, people our age are going wild when, a box set of Crosby, Stills and Nash comes out, right? No. Pretty much all of the artists they mentioned here are very modern, very, teeny bopper or rap appealing to very large cross sections of young people who have higher crash rates generally. So, and who I would argue are maybe more susceptible to distraction, but that may not, I don't know if that bears out. I would like to see this broken out along the age lines to see what's really going on here and whether it's just music or some other factors coming into play.
I would like to listen to Michael talk more about how music is consumed. A Crosby, Stills and Nash box set. A box set?
Come on.
Like, what is
you haven't had a box set before?
Yeah, but that was 30 years ago.
Well, they only did 2 albums.
Oh, God. Yeah, they only did 2 albums because you cut the fence at Woodstock, and they're like, well, no one's paying.
I did my best.
I thought it was because Neil Young went to jail, but maybe that was something else.
All right. So I told you this past week, I took a long road trip, and unfortunately I had to go through the great state of Connecticut, where the posted speed limit, again, is 55, and the speed minimum that people are doing is 78. So this is always fun. Great state of Connecticut. Just arrest everybody. But AAA, they're on board with me. They did a study, find that most drivers think speeding is normal, putting everyone at risk. I'm going to quote from this AAA newsroom. Findings from this research show that some drivers in the United States view speeding as a normal part of driving, says Dr. David Yang, President and Executive Director of AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. When people take cues from surrounding traffic instead of following posted speed limits, it creates a culture that makes crashes more difficult to prevent and roads less safe for everyone. So the top reasons for speeding: to get around slower drivers, to reach their destination faster, which is nonsense, to avoid holding up traffic. So and this points out that something that I think I was taught is, you go the normal speed of traffic. What everyone else is going, you should be kind of going in that flow. And this points out, don't do that. That's incredibly dangerous. Whereas I was under the false impression that, if the speed limit's 55, you're doing what everyone else is doing, which is 78 in Connecticut.
Yeah, I don't think that I guess that the flow thing is problematic because it essentially lets the majority or the crowd determine how fast everyone is going.
Right.
I've never really followed that. It doesn't really work. Yes, there are roads where there are going to be more prevalent speeders. Anthony has frequently cited Connecticut as one of those on the podcast. However, what are the factors behind that? I guess it's more important to look at. I think one of the craziest things about this is they're literally, I think, was it 16% of people who they interviewed are put in the category of autonomy first drivers. Now, obviously, these are males and primarily in rural areas, and they essentially just disagree with the idea of speed limits and believe that they are capable of setting their own speed limits as they drive. They essentially are people that think they can do whatever they want without consequence and without regard for everybody else on the road. The fact that 16% of us are that way, and if we're males, I would go ahead and guess it's probably higher than that, because I'm going to guess that this is predominantly a male. Although there are women who speed like mad, right? And we've covered crashes like that. I think that the number of males who fall in this category is probably higher. Maybe even a quarter of men. So that's scary. That's a huge group of people who simply have no regard for anybody else on the road.
So you ever have one of those Schadenfreude moments where you're driving in traffic and then there's some jackass who's weaving out and speeding around everybody, tailgating you, and you're like, I hope they get pulled over by the cops, or all something.
The time.
So this, even better, what happened is driving 15 south through Connecticut. And, Google Maps like, hey, there's a lane closure up ahead. Okay, great. And they've got the big orange signs, the flashing lights. They've got cones out. And one of these jackasses, with the traffic at this point moving well under 30, managed to hit the orange construction barrier with the sign. Slowed down traffic even more. But I was like, that guy tried to drive up my butt. So, anyway, yeah. So sorry, Fred, I cut you off. Maybe I did.
Well, I was just going to say that a really great example, and you can test this, Michael, is the Southeast Expressway in Washington, D.C.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Filled with ambitious people. Nobody noticing that the speed limit is 45 miles an hour. I think it's easily the average speed is 70 miles an hour. So after I got my speeding ticket in Washington on one of the other roads, I decided to drive the speed limit in Washington. It was really interesting, the way people, I was like a rock in a stream, the way everybody went around me and were undeterred in their own speed, but gave me several famous salutes with a famous hand gesture and honked their horns in respect of my careful driving. So it was nice. It was the only time in Washington when I was really noticed.
So the takeaway, listeners, is don't speed.
Yeah, I mean, that is the takeaway. I think it's an interesting study how they divide kind of the 5 types of drivers here, and look at people who are super conscientious about speed limits versus people who have slightly more relaxed takes on them, all the way up to the obvious problems. In fact, I think if you could stop that 16% at the top from speeding, we'd probably almost eliminate all the fatalities related to speeding, because those are people who frankly just don't give a damn about other humans around them. And frankly, I guess what I'm saying is they're too stupid to even value their own life. So, the 16% of people who think they make the law and that speeding is a right and that driving is not a privilege, it's a right, are really a problem on the roads and cause an outsized number of fatalities and injuries. And, we should eliminate those kind of drivers from the road in any way possible. I recommend, versus, other extreme measures, getting active intelligent speed assistance into all vehicles so that at some point in the future, cars just want speed.
Oh, yeah. Everybody just wants speed, especially Fred's favorite company, Waymo. They want speed to expand their service. How is that for a transition? High five to myself. So an article in Electric titled "Waymo Wins California Approval to Expand Robo-Taxis Across 18 Counties." I'm going to quote from this. So the CPUC, this is the California Public Utilities Commission, which we've covered in the past, had a former...
Yeah. Before you even mention everything else, let's not forget that the president of the CPUC, John Reynolds, was GM Cruise's counsel prior to joining the commission. That's a conflict of interest that has never been truly addressed and should disqualify him from any type of decision-making on these issues.
I agree, and we've covered it repeatedly, and that's how I was going to start, but I like the way you jumped in. You said it better than I was. I'm going to quote from this article: "The operating conditions Waymo asked for are just as wide. all speed limits, freeways, highways, city streets, railroads, parking lots, driveways, and rail crossings day and night in rain, fog, and hail. The only real carve out is widespread snow or ice. So Waymo is basically saying we're set to operate in all of these things, which is amazing because we've seen Waymos fail in rain, fog, and railroad crossings. We've never seen them operate in snow or ice because they've never done that.
Well, they're 94% safer, so come on.
Yeah.
Right?
Further down, quoting, in March, the CPUC Deputy Executive Director Pat Sin said flatly that Tesla is not operating an autonomous vehicle service and that what Tesla holds is a charter party carrier permit, the same one a limousine gets. That permit doesn't come with an AV safety reporting, data transparency, or the quarterly filings Waymo and Zoox have to submit. So basically, the CPUC is saying, we like Waymo, and I'm going to stick my thumb in Tesla's eye just because I can. But I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, just to point out that Tesla doesn't have the service, but they're just letting Waymos just go all over the place, even though Waymo still can't close their doors.
Here's the thing. They're letting Waymos go all over the place, including into cities where the cities have clearly expressed opposition. You know, the San Diego Metropolitan Transit System said, you know, they voted 12-1, formally opposing Waymo's expansion into their area. And the CPUC said, our president used to work for Cruise. Screw you. We're just going to move in. And that's kind of at the heart of a lot of the things we support as far as local control. Like, localities should have the ability to say whether or not these vehicles, which are incredibly new to the scene and have not by any respect proved their safety, as we discuss ad nauseum on this podcast. You know, if a city doesn't want this technology operating on its streets and requiring its police officers and firefighters and other emergency personnel to babysit them all the time, they should have that option. Certainly now and going out, you know, maybe a few decades until the technology is more mature. But this is just, you know, once again, there is a string of tech broism that runs through Gavin Newsom, the governor out there, through some of the nominations he's made to the Public Utilities Commission, John Reynolds, and it is pro-tech and does not respect the decisions and the authority of local areas, cities, counties. And that's something the autonomous industry loves. They're trying to get that system put into law in every state they lobby to make sure that localities have no decision-making power here and that they have to go to a state which is going to be slower, less responsive to their citizens to make any type of decisions around autonomous vehicle expansion. So it's a tough world out there for localities.
So I got to jump in now with the towel because I'm going to put some real data into the Waymo safety argument. So the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which is an independent organization funded by insurance industry, did a study of different types of cars and the hazard that they actually present. Newer cars. So we're not talking about the average over all the 12-year-old cars and all that sort of stuff. We're talking about cars that were produced in 2023. So this is interesting because this allows a comparison with the vehicles that Waymo is using, which is the Jaguar E-Pace, right? And if we look at that, so there's 4 assumptions that I'm making, that the Jaguar E-Pace rate is the same as all of the 2023 midsize luxury cars. The reported 4 Waymo-related deaths equate to 2.5 equivalent deaths due to the nature of the crashes. And this is something that Phil Koopman talked about, right? Some of them occurred while Waymos were stationary, some of them while they were moving. But Waymo would say, no, you know, we're not at fault, which is nonsense because the FAR data is not assembled on the basis of whether or not there is a fault involved. It's just the number of crashes that result in death. And this IIHS data was originated from the FAR data set. And the other assumption I made is that I assumed that there was an equation between the reported death rates for drivers plus other drivers in the IIHS report to the reported Waymo occupant deaths, because the driver's comparison doesn't work for them. But that's another reason why I pushed down the 4 reported deaths to 2.5, just to try to make it more equitable. And this was in favor of Waymo. So if I do that and then look at the Waymo Driver 6, which has been around for 2 years now, and there are 3,000 cars, that comes out to be 6,000 vehicle years. And that's the parameter that IIHS was using for their assembly of data. And the rate per million miles for Waymo is 417. The rate for luxury midsize cars is 76, and the rate in 2023 for all cars was 90. So if you look at this comparison, Waymo, based upon real data from real independent analysts, is 5.5 times more hazardous than the luxury cars with which it can be compared. So that's not 94% less. It's not 28% less. It's 5.5 times more hazardous in terms of deaths involved in the vehicle operation than the other 2023 comparable luxury cars. So this is a statistic that is supportable based upon real data, real cars, and real information from the federal database. So anybody who's considering licensing Waymos needs to take a close look at the data, not the nonsense that Waymo puts out, but the data that's being produced by independent, responsible authorities, and IIHS happens to be one of those. So the Waymo is at least 5.5 times. And if you change this to other kinds of cars, by the way, if you go to larger SUVs, that comparison does not come in Waymo's favor. It makes Waymo look even worse. So that's the number to keep in your head. Based upon these data, Waymo is 5.5 times more hazardous than other cars. And the comparison, by the way, is at a 95% confidence level with the other cars. It's hard to say what the confidence level is for the Waymos because there's only been very few numbers of deaths reported so far. But it's not looking good. And that's it.
That's pretty good. But okay, so Waymo's, we know their BS claim that they're 94% better than humans, and we've reported out that all of us are 100% better than Waymo. But you're saying that it's 5.5 times more hazardous than a normal driver, right? Than other vehicles.
Than human-driven cars and comparable cars,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you look at newer cars with the active safety systems and all the things that actually make the significantly change, the miles traveled per fatality.
And that's what's unique and significant about this IIHS data. It's not all cars. It's not 27-year-old cars with 6-volt electrical systems. It's newer cars, comparable models to what Waymo is using, and human drivers versus Waymo. And a comparison is the Waymo's 5.5 times more dangerous.
So how would they get insurance based off of that data? Because I can't imagine if I was 5.5 times worse than the average nominal human driver.
How would they get it? Yeah. They would pay for it.
Yeah,
right?
but
I think a lot of these companies are self-insured for that reason.
Wait, can you be self-insured? It's California. You can do anything with insurance.
The states require bond, so they can virtually insure themselves. They're not required to go out and get coverage from.
Well, I think they are, but they're only required to have 5 million.
Yeah, and it's still too low to cover an actual crash, right? They might have to put up a bond, but even if there's an actual crash and fatality, they're going to be settling for more than the amount the state required them to ensure safety through a bond, which is nonsense. I mean,
yeah. Well, the other thing is that if you're in a Waymo, you've already signed away your rights to sue. So you're triply screwed. You're 5 times as likely
here's the other thing,
get
though.
killed.
If you are actually in a crash that's involving a Waymo and it is the fault of the Waymo, they're going to settle with you so quick and for so much more money than $5 million that it'll make your head spin. So
wait a second.
Two sides to that, right?
This sounds like a funding opportunity. So I just got to get into a Waymo, hope it crashes, and they're going to give me a lot of money.
Yeah. How are you? They won't, like, I think there was a person who was severely injured. Wasn't it a biker by a Dory incident with Waymo? Yeah. That thing got settled so fast, right? That they are out there trying. I mean, and part of that is an NDA, right? They're the person who was involved in the crash can't talk about it anymore. So they are very aggressive in that area.
And so, how do facts compare with PR? That's what we're going to find out. Yeah. But this is data that's only very recently become available. And thank you, IIHS, for this. This is important stuff.
Yeah. So how severe of an injury do I need to get the good money?
I think you should just lay this all out so that the police will have no problem finding you and arresting you.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Try not to find out.
Come on.
Try not to find out, Anthony.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Who's your? I'll just go ahead and report you to the New York regulatory authorities that are involved.
And now that this has been recorded, of course, you're going to have to face cross-examination, Anthony.
I'd like to point out that I edit this show.
And, Waymo has probably already scratched you off of their, lips. I thought, they may not like you.
Waymo, just because you're 5.5 times worse than the normal human driver, doesn't mean we can't be friends. I'd never get inside you.
Try to make a reservation, Anthony. Go ahead, sign away your rights, and
No, if I did that, I could
go to the website.
I could never.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can sign away their rights.
No, I mean, it sounds like worse than the jankiest roller coaster to get into, run by a carny.
For perspective, motorcycles are 20 times as likely to kill you as a car, and people still buy and ride motorcycles. So there's a population that's going to ignore this. But in terms of calibrating the truth of the PR nonsense that's coming out of Waymo, this is a very important number.
I think this is good. With this data, I want to ask my favorite AI, what's more dangerous, a Waymo or a poorly maintained roller coaster at a side of the road fair?
I don't think AI is going to be able to provide a very compelling answer.
Especially not the one written by Google.
Not the 95% nonsense AIs out there. But still, I mean, I guess what's the most important part of all of this is when you're comparing anything to human, there are a lot of factors that matter. It's not a one-to-one correlation. Tesla's done this where they compared their very new vehicles to 20-year-old vehicles across the fleet and saying they're better. Waymo's doing the same thing. And, you really need to make apples to apples comparisons around vehicles here. And unfortunately, the biggest two apples involved here are a computer driver and a human driver. And I don't know that we have come up with the proper metrics to evaluate the crash rates and the safety there yet.
Well, not until now.
Yeah.
You mentioned Tesla, so we're going to talk about door handles from Lexus. So Tesla's been the one that's been caught with this a lot. The electronic door handles, which is a dumb feature no one's ever asked for. And Rivian has this as well, and Lexus. So talking about Lexus because a bunch of Lexus owners are getting on forums and being like, hey, my 12-volt battery died. I'm trapped inside. I can't get out. And like a Tesla, you need to have read the manual to figure out how to get into manual mode to release it. No. I watched a video on this is, stop me here.
These Lexus vehicles have the feature where you pull twice on the handle and the door opens.
Nope. I watched a video and this was at a Lexus dealership and they showed how to do it. So you pull twice rapidly and then you push on the door handle. It's not pull twice like you normally would and push the door.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's weird. And so it's strange.
But like this door handle is weird. The door handle in these vehicles is weird, period. Even if you're not trying to escape manually. I see a lot of complaints from owners saying, God, I'm so tired of having to instruct my passengers how to get out of these cars. because the door handle itself barely even looks like a normal door handle.
So yeah, when it's in electronic mode, it is definitely weird. In normal mode, it's weird too, but it's weird. You pull twice rapidly, and then you have to push on the door handle, not the door, to get it to manually release. Even more wild was they showed you how to get into your car, and we'll put a link to this little YouTube video, how to get into your door from the outside if the battery dies. So it's got what look like normal looking door handles that we all see. They protrude from the side of the door. And this is awesome. So it's flush. There's no key part on this. Instead, there's a little cap on the end of the door handle. So you got to get like a credit card and pry off this end cap
off.
And in there, what do you see? A lock that you stick a key into. This is dumb engineering.
We're hiding the key.
This is a marketing person who should be slapped in the face. This is so
here's
stupid.
The thing. Like, why is this problem arising generally? It's not because handles stop working. It's because these companies are putting form over function, and they're missing the plot, right? They're not understanding how important it is that the function work first, that people need to look at something and recognize that is a way to open a door. And they in these vehicles, the buttons and the weird handles aren't giving off handle vibes, I guess is the way to say it. They're not intuitive. They're not, why are we changing handles? Handles are obvious. So why are we doing this just to make features fit seamlessly into cars and look cool when we know they're confusing passengers and are likely at some point going to result in somebody dying in a fire simply to get a cool factor and sell more cars? It's pathetic.
In the Jalopnik article that talks about this, it talks about somebody who was trapped inside the car and they couldn't figure out how to get the manual release open. And so they smashed the window to climb out and get out of the vehicle, which is insane. I mean, and also,
good thing it was tempered, right?
And the thing is, like, Michael, if you thought it was exactly like how it worked, where you just pull twice and it goes there, you'd be smashing the window too, because you'd be like, I pulled twice. I didn't know I had to press on the hand. Like, it's madness. So
I mean, ultimately, it has to be intuitive. Like pulling on a handle twice and the door popping open is pretty intuitive, because you're going to be trying to pull the hell out of a handle to get out of a car.
I don't see why you can't just pull on a handle
this
once.
Pull and push thing is weird.
It's all very, very strange. I don't get it. This is a marketing department looking for something to do.
Bring back the buttons, bring back the handles.
Yeah, suck less. And with that, let's jump into some recalls. How's that sound? Oh boy, this is going to be fun. 18,248 recalls from a company called Bluebird Body Company. This is a car recall, right, Michael? This isn't. I know, these are buses. So
they're buses, and that's a lot of buses.
This is.
I guess to put it in perspective, I think Bluebird produces like maybe 9,000 total buses every year. So this is 2 full years of their entire fleet.
Yeah. So this
being recalled. I mean, for GM, this would be like a 5 million vehicle recall.
Right. So this is the 2027 Bluebird Vision school bus and the electric version of that, which is interesting about the 2027 years. Their production dates start in 2021. Whatever. It's a bunch of all of these buses, pages and pages and pages and
it's
pages.
It's 21 through 27.
Oh, now it is right. Okay,
they screwed up on their production dates. In their 573.
Certain of these 21 to 27 Vision vehicles may be equipped with an unfused 12-volt power wire on the C or D zone harness that can be damaged from abrasion, further resulting in a potential disruption of critical safety function on fused circuits. Oh, no. A short to ground could result in the unfused wire radiating heat to the surrounding wires in the harness, disrupting critical safety features, including front warning lights, marker lights, rear brake lights, reverse lights, license plate lights, and rear warning lights. This is, not good.
No, it's terrible. It's on school buses, right?
Because they don't have dealers, right? You can't just drive it to your local Bluebird bus dealer.
They do have a dealership.
Well, yeah, but they've got one. If you're,
I don't know,
or two, I don't know.
It's listed as Bluebird dealership or owner. Well, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, Fred.
You're in the middle of East Jesus, Texas somewhere, and you got a
Yeah, they have
Bluebird.
authorized dealers and service centers like everybody else, although I would expect they're, a lot less well distributed across the United States. And so you're going to have to, I don't know, buses are expensive. Obviously, for a school system taking, its fleet of 30 school buses 200, 300 miles to get a recall performed is a lift. And that makes me wonder just how good schools are doing on their open recall repairs.
Ooh, that should be a fun student project. Hey, if you're a student listening to this show, what happened? But if you are, hey, go check to see if your school buses have an open recall.
Yeah, I think you could do it just by getting their license plates. I mean, the VIN number is probably visible too at some place, but you could check out your school bus license plates on NHTSA's website and see if your school's doing its job to keep you safe.
I like that.
Well, and tell your parents to go to autosafety.org and donate, right?
Yeah. Hey, or you could be a student. You could have a job. Who knows? You can donate too. Give now. Give young. Give often.
We only take whole Bitcoins.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Next up, Toyota. 48,280 vehicles. The 2024 Toyota Tacoma Hybrid and the straight up Toyota Tacoma, the 24 to 25. The subject vehicle is equipped with front and rear shock absorbers that have an external oil reservoir attached to the shock absorber using a welded flange of a certain length. Corrosion can build up and an expansive force in the weld securing the reservoir to the shock absorber, which can lead to weld failure. In some cases, the reservoir can detach from the shock absorber. If the reservoir detaches while driving, it can create a road hazard. Okay. So this is a bad weld?
Yeah.
Looks like a bad weld. That's a shock.
Oh, it's corrosion causing problems with the weld. So I don't know if it's a bad weld or more the untreated metal surfaces that are allowing corrosion to happen, which causes the weld failure. So either way, I think you're going to get new
reservoirs.
They're going to inspect the front and rear shock absorber assemblies and will replace affected ones with improved ones at no cost. It's not clear on whether they're replacing all of them or not here. It doesn't sound like they are since there's an inspection involved. So I would be, the dealer's going to get paid for doing your recall from the manufacturer regardless. So they should be they should be looking at this from the perspective of, is this going to fail in the future, right? Because there's corrosion occurring here. And even if they look at a vehicle now and there's no corrosion, there might be some later. This is one of the things around these inspection recalls that I'm always concerned about. You can take your vehicle in, get the vehicle inspected. It checks a box off that says your recall has been performed, and then the condition might arise later, which is something that I think we need built into our recall system to kind of protect people long term.
But we don't know what the procedure is. And the procedure for inspection may also involve putting corrosion protection on the joint. So that's a possibility. We would need to see the procedure that's recommended in order to really be judgmental about that.
Okay. I feel I can be judgmental and be uninformed. It's America. Last recall, BMW. 27,720 vehicles. The 2022 to 26 8 Series 750E Extra. What? A bunch of BMWs with silly names still. The connection between the drive shaft and the rear axle differential will be checked and either adhesive will be applied. I can't tell what happened here. This is a very long one. What happened here, Michael? Talk to me. Between the first and third quarter of 2025, computer simulation was performed, including simulations of surface pressure at the interface between the drive shaft and the rear axle differential. A review of the big data was performed, including production data from available vehicle assembly plants. The data was compared across manufacturing plants to look for inconsistencies or anomalies, metallurgic detections. They're really hiding it. It looks like there's something with the drive shaft and the rear axle differential, but I can't really tell.
Well, they're saying it's a matter. I mean, I guess I take some exception with this description here because they're saying that the wear is the cause of this problem, not the fact that they didn't properly design the differential and axle connection to avoid that kind of wear, right? So there's clearly a problem here. And this is another issue where they're doing an inspection and, this is a wear problem. Getting one inspection done and then checking a box said we did that recall ultimately doesn't guarantee that the vehicle is going to be safe in the future. This problem still exists. So I'm skeptical about this kind of recall action. If they were saying we're going to replace all these drive shaft and rear axles because they weren't designed to avoid wear that can result in a safety issue, that makes sense. But guess what? It's more expensive.
I'm going to say that this recall and the previous one, very unsatisfying.
Yeah, well, if you're looking for recalls to satisfy in your daily life, you're in trouble.
Hey, Ford never fails me. Ford doesn't fail. Oh, yes?
One more thing. I had to do a correction from last week.
Oh, right. Do it.
Astutely pointed out by a listener, a vehicle that can detect and avoid edge cases all on its own is a unicorn. It may not ever exist. However, that does not automatically make it a level 5, because if the vehicle was only intended to operate in level 3 zone, then it's, presumably, if this could ever happen, I still think it's a unicorn. It could detect all edge cases in that scenario. Essentially, what I'm saying is there are a lot of different types of unicorns that can occur in driverless vehicles. I think a level 5 is a unicorn, essentially a vehicle that doesn't have an operating design domain. It can go anywhere. That's something that I don't think we're going to see ever, if not, in the next 100 years or more. But this is another one that I think is virtually impossible. Saying that you can detect and avoid all edge cases in a vehicle, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Even though technically that's not a level 5 vehicle. I think we could probably come up with some other unicorns if we tried hard enough, like a human-free unicorn, right? A vehicle that doesn't have to rely on remote operators or remote assistance in any form whatsoever, right? Or a camera-only unicorn, a vehicle that can operate to perfection from a safety perspective using only cameras, a la the Cybercab. So I these kind of the hype and a lot of the things behind automated vehicles results in some of these issues, and industry's trying to push really hard for it. But that said, I did not accurately describe that last week. I wanted listeners to be aware of that.
I think if you had Michael Brooks saying the word unicorn 5 times in your Polymarket bet, you're set to retire. That was quite strange. With that, listeners, thanks for joining us for Season 5, Episode 1. Seasons are meaningless. It's just the way I catalog things on my computer. We'll be back next week. See you at the Piggly Wiggly. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
For more information, visit www.autosafety.org.